My name is Cindy Scharschmidt, and I'm the Director of Student Fellowships and Study Abroad in the Office of Global Affairs at the University of Washington, Tacoma. I'm excited to talk to you about the Pat Tillman Scholarship today. Here's what we'll cover. We'll talk about the basics of the Tillman Scholarship, including eligibility requirements. We'll talk in a little bit more depth about the application process and what materials are required. And I'll mention some resources that can assist you in the application process. The pictures that you'll see throughout this presentation are of UW students who have been recipients of the Tillman Scholarship. Those are both students on the Seattle and Tacoma campuses. Okay, so the Tillman Scholarship funds outstanding veteran active duty students and military spouses who have great talent, strong leadership potential, and want to make a positive impact. And I should say that this is a competitive award. The Tillman Scholarship awards about 60 scholarships a year. And they're really looking for applicants who will make significant contributions in their field of interest. And it really doesn't matter what your field of study or your field for your career is going to be, as long as you have ideas for how to move that field forward and how you're going to have a positive impact to not just you and your family, but to a larger segment of society. As I mentioned, they're also looking for strong leadership potential. And the easiest way to demonstrate that you have that potential to be a leader is if you already have leadership experience of some kind. That'll look very, very different depending on your situation. But think about instances where you have led and taken initiative and again had a positive impact as a result. Of course, they're also looking for applicants with a strong service orientation. If you are an active duty service member, a veteran, or a military spouse, then you've already demonstrated a strong commitment to serving your country. And the Tillman wants to know how that service commitment will continue once you finish school and enter the workforce. All right, so the Tillman Scholarship covers educational expenses, including tuition and fees, books, and living expenses. And that's really exciting, right? Because a lot of military-affiliated students might be using VA benefits of some kind to fund their education, but those sometimes run out after you complete your undergraduate degree, or they may not cover everything that you have in terms of expenses. And so the Tillman Scholarship includes a pretty detailed budget section where you indicate what are your expenses in any given year or month, and how much of that is already supported either through VA benefits or other sources. And then the Tillman Scholarship will cover the rest essentially. In addition to the financial award, there are some non-monetary benefits of being named a Tillman Scholar. Like we talked about, this is an opportunity to develop as a leader, and being part of the Tillman cohort means that you'll have access to leadership training and development, and I'll talk about that in a little bit in a bit more detail. You'll have access to the Tillman Network essentially for the rest of your life, so there'll be opportunities to network with members of your cohort and then also with alumni of the program. And then there's also an opportunity to engage in professional development through the Tillman Network, and that can take a variety of different forms, but essentially there are quite a few Tillman alumni who've gone on to do some pretty outstanding work in a variety of fields, and being part of the Tillman Network means that you will have access to those people and be able to learn from them in a mentor-mentee type of relationship. Okay, so the scholarship is named after Pat Tillman. If you're a military affiliated student, you will likely already be familiar with who Pat Tillman was. But just in case you're not, or if you need a refresher, here are a few facts about Pat Tillman. He was a safety with the Arizona Cardinals and also a student at ASU. He also played while he was a student in college. In 2002, so after 9/11, Pat decided to enlist in the Army to serve his country. And he deployed twice to Iraq and then to Afghanistan in 2003 and 4. And he died in friendly fire during an ambush while being deployed in Afghanistan. This foundation was named after him to support military affiliated students in their pursuit of education and their future career goals. It's helpful to read up on Pat's legacy in a bit more detail as you're preparing to apply for this scholarship. It's named after him, right? That means it's designed to honor his legacy, and some of the application essays ask you to comment on things that have to do with the strong service orientation and leadership skills that Pat also embodied. I think we talked about some of this already, but veteran and active duty military service members are eligible to apply. That includes honorably discharged pre and post 9/11 veterans and active duty students from all branches of the U.S. military can apply, including the National Guard and the Reserve. And also spouses of veterans or active duty service members, including those that may be surviving spouses, are eligible to apply. You have to be pursuing a degree as a full-time student, either at the undergraduate or at the graduate level. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the selection criteria for the Tillman. These are the factors that will be taken into consideration when your application is reviewed. And again, keep in mind that this is a fairly competitive opportunity, so you have to do your best to speak to all of these selection criteria in the application materials. Again, this is an opportunity for future leaders, and so the Tillman Foundation is going to look at your educational and career ambitions. They'll also look at your prior military service or the community's impact that you've made as a military spouse. They'll look at personal achievements. They'll look for that service orientation, and that could be both in the military context or in the community. They're looking for evidence that you'll be a positive change agent. So really, what is it that you're hoping to do with your education and with your career, and who are you going to benefit by the work that you plan to do? Leadership potential is something that we've already talked about. And then part of the application are 2 essays, which we'll talk about in a moment. And those have to be compelling, thoughtful, and genuine, and of course speak to all of those selection criteria that are on this slide now. I would say that you don't need to necessarily use the words that are up on this slide, right? You can speak to these ideas without using the exact same language that Tillman uses, but you do want to make sure that you show evidence of all of these criteria in your application materials. All right, so the application process includes, or the application materials include the following. You'll have to either document your military service or your community impact as a military spouse. You'll submit a resume and then 2 essays, and they're each 400 words long. The first one will talk about your military and public service experiences and also speak to what motivated you to pursue those in the first place. And then the second essay talks about your educational career and service ambitions. And again, keep in mind the selection criteria for the Tillman and make sure that you address those in the application materials. And you're submitting a resume and 2 essays. The essays are relatively short, which means you can't talk about everything that you've done in your life in those 2 essays. So be judicious and focus on experiences in the essays that are the most relevant to the Tillman, right? Again, that speak to the criteria that we talked about just a moment ago. And then for those experiences that still are important and relevant, but that don't fit into the essays, make sure that you highlight them in the resume so the reviewers get kind of a comprehensive view of who you are. You'll also need to submit a character reference, and the Tillman website has more information about what that entails. It's not a standard letter of reference, it's rather a series of questions that somebody who can speak to your personal character needs to complete. And like I said, there is a financial worksheet section where you talk about all of your anticipated expenses and then include any sources of support that you may already have in place. The deadline this year is at the end of February, so there's really not a whole lot of time to complete the application process, so get started as soon as possible. All right, so going back to the professional and leadership development that is part of the Tillman Scholarship experience, Tillman scholars are invited to the Leadership Summit every year. It takes place in July, typically in Chicago. And it's a series of events that are designed to create a sense of community among Tillman scholars and alumni. And it includes panels and discussions, service project, morning workouts, those will be familiar to those of you who served, and various team building events. I think that this is sort of a highlight of the Tillman Scholarship experience, and hopefully you'll form connections at this Leadership Summit that'll stay with you for the rest of your life. Okay, so keep in mind that there's support available, and we are here to offer application advice, look at drafts of your essays, and provide feedback to make sure that you put forth your best possible work. We can strategize for the character reference or letters of recommendation more generally if you need to think about who to ask and how to ask. I'm certainly happy to talk to you about that. I offer personal statement workshops and other info sessions and workshops, and for those fellowships that require it, we facilitate campus interviews, but the Tillman does not require a campus interview. Here's contact information for the Student Fellowships unit in the Office of Global Affairs. We're located in GWP 102, and you can reach us at tscholar@uw.edu. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and you can call too if that's your preference. All right, thank you so much for joining us for today's tutorial, and best of luck.